Kiki ma ma ma. Welcome back to the Masters of Horror as presented by the Cult Film Showdown. I am James Cotta, and I am joined by the co-host Solution, Nick Boxer.
I'm here. You know what? I'm not here. I'm getting a beer. Continue without me for a minute.
And the 7% Solution, that is Jack Hall.
I'm not feeling too good. I just threw up my kiki ma ma ma. And
shouldn't have that on an empty stomach. It's
you really got to learn.
Foreign foods like
learn.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
You have a taste for foreign food,
yeah.
We are 3/4 of the Cult Film Showdown, 60% of the Cult Film Showdown, if you count the guy that left the show early. And we are watching.
I'm back. Don't worry.
I was.
Oh yeah. We were worried. Luckily, you're back to interrupt the middle of the show.
Masters of Horror was an anthology horror series that ran from 2005 to 2007, run by Mick Garris, featuring some of the greats of horror, both writers, directors, and even some cast. So we've been walking through this series. We are currently on season 2, episode 7. We're in the home stretch. And this is episode 7, The Screwfly Solution. And we're going to ask Jack to tell us who our masters are this time.
Well, where do we start with this one? 3 very interesting names on this one. Of course, it's directed by Joe Dante. If you even need me to tell you who Joe Dante is, you probably shouldn't be listening to this podcast. Obviously, Gremlins and Gremlins 2, among his many, many works. The Burbs, another one horror comedy that he's done. Piranha, The Howling, the great film that we need to someday try and put in the Octagon. I'm not sure, it might be too good for it, but it's awesome. Matinee. We've seen him previously in doing my favorite episodes of season 1, which was Homecoming, season 1 of Masters of Horror.
Right.
Sam Hamm wrote the screenplay. Sam Hamm, best known for Batman, 1989's Tim Burton's Batman, as well as numerous comic book scripts and Never Cry Wolf, Monkey Bone, a couple other films that he's done. Has a credit on Batman Returns, though the story that actually happened was nowhere near what he had written and given to them. But nevertheless, has a credit on it. Sam Hamm also worked on Homecoming with Joe Dante in season 1, and it's from a short story from James Tiptree Jr., which was the pen name of Alice Bradley Sheldon. Though this story actually was done as, I believe, Raccoona Sheldon, not Raccoon. Raccoona Sheldon. Fascinating character. Largely worked in science fiction. There's a science fiction award even in her name. Member of the Science Fiction Hall of Fame as of 2012. Lived a fascinating life and a fascinating and tragic end. A movie should probably be made on James Tiptree's life, Tiptree Jr.'s life. It would be for a fascinating movie or documentary. I'm not going to get into it here, but it's something you could look up, and it's really quite amazing. So very deep roots on this one. Not necessarily horror roots, because Joe Dante, while he has worked in horror, probably is more associated with the comedy. Sam Hamm, more associated probably with the superhero genre. Of course, Alice or James, whatever you want to go by, more associated with science fiction. But this is a story that I would say probably I would list more as science fiction than as horror, but is a very, very dark science fiction story.
Yeah, this is one of. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just going to say, I'm kind of surprised you left out Joe Dante's scariest film, Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Too frightening. Never made it.
Terrifies me.
Oh, I want to watch The Burbs now. Just you mentioning it. It's my younger brother's favorite movie.
It holds
it's a
up pretty damn
fantastic
well.
movie.
I watched it just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's such a fun movie.
It's no matinee, but it's pretty damn good. God, matinee's good.
Yeah, Satan
The
is
book,
good.
right?
Satan is my pal.
Yeah. So much fun.
Canada Spotting is right up front here. Jason Priestley, Canadian Treasure, is our lead. Is one of our leads here, and again, if you're under 30, we'll have to explain who Jason Priestley is. But otherwise, you just know.
Jason Priestley, again, I don't really associate him with horror, but
I don't either. No,
he is certainly somebody that is an actor who I find is very underappreciated. And a legendary actor, Elliot Gould, also is in this. Again, not really in horror, but obviously when you play in movies like MASH and many other legendary movies from the 70s and 80s and these different projects, I mean,
you have to explain who he is to anyone under 50.
Yeah, well, there is that
problem. if you're under,
he was in Friends.
I was going to say, if you're under 50, he was Monica's dad on Friends. There's your check-in point.
He was the old guy in Ocean's 11, yeah.
You've probably seen him playing an old Jewish man in about 20 different things, and you're like, oh, that's who that guy is.
No, and then if you're thinking of Judd Hirsch, we're talking Elliot Gould.
That's right. He's who you call if Judd Hirsch is busy.
That's right. He's the other old Jewish guy.
All right, Nick, tell us what is the Screwfly Solution?
Well, this is a pandemic story. The action takes place among a group or a family, rather, of epidemiologists. And if you don't know what I said or what I was trying to say, that's a family that studies germs and diseases. And there's a disease hitting the United States and the entire world, for that matter, that is screwing up men's sex drives to confuse aggression with sexual arousal. And this disease is spreading across the world, and men are just snapping and killing women for no reason. I think there is some bullshit about it becoming sort of a religious act as well, but that's really not part of it. It's just men start snapping and killing people. We get a really interesting look at what people thought a pandemic would look like before we actually had a pandemic, and I think we did really well compared to the predicted results.
I was watching that thinking, like, this is a really chill, global killer pandemic, because like
they didn't even shut down the planes, man.
No, it's there's like even the people in the lab aren't wearing a mask. They're like, there's like,
well, they do say there's no sense of wearing the mask. There's the only two ways to prevent this, and it basically comes down to castration. There's a pill that essentially performs castration without actual physical castration, and then there's castration, and these are the only. And of course, all the men are like, I'd rather kill the woman than castrate myself, so nobody does that. It's like, if the choice is I become a murderous human being who kills all the opposite sex, or I lose my balls, you're going down, lady. I'm sorry.
It is funny when
the
general who says, I'm not ordering my men to lose their manhood.
But it's a fascinating concept, and so when you see that the writer of this was James Tiptree Jr., you'll have one thing in mind when you would learn that that's actually a female who wrote this. I think it takes on a whole different context when you learn that this female was in reality had a complicated sexual history. They say she's a very interesting story, describing as women as the ones who light herself up and not men, even though she's married and passed away with a suicide pact with her husband, or perhaps a murder-suicide, nobody knows. It really, like, the stuff starts to flow and snowball, and you start to really wonder about what's going on in the story and the different things, and it all takes on different contexts.
I actually found some of the, like, just production elements kind of disturbing. Having the two name actors men, considering how female-centric the story seems to be, I found that problematic, personally.
Well, the two main names are men, but the actual lead performers, as it goes on, are largely it's the wife of Jason Priestley's character, and the fact that this isn't a named performer, I think, actually helps the thing, because you don't have anything else in your head that would distract you from the character and the world that she's in. You don't have the fact that you're not looking at her going, oh, 90210. You know, like you always kind of have that little bit with Jason Priestley.
Yeah, you have an idea of who he he plays against type for sure. Like he's
definitely.
Which is I think it's an interesting piece for him. He was directing a lot around this time. It's interesting to see him take on like just the acting role on its own. But he
suffered that tragic car accident probably about this time, didn't he?
I don't know the answer to that.
This would have been after.
Okay. Because at first it feels like this is World War Z, where we're going to watch Jason Priestley running around the country trying to save everybody, and that's not what the story is. That's just your setup, but that's not what the movie is actually about. And it is interesting that as we see the people, as we see the men talking without women present, as the story goes along, it really has this very threatening, but unfortunately very recognizable feel. I was thinking watching it, like, I think that these guys may have predicted incels. I think that's basically what these guys feel like. And there's some subtle weirdness about like, because once the women are gone, they start looking for who next to kill, which is also like that opens up a whole can of worms.
Yes, it is the less masculine men. It's basically who the more masculine men decide that they'll get rid of next.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, Nick had mentioned when he's talking about it, the religious thing, which doesn't really play into it. I think that's just the idea, there's some sort of political statement, I guess, the idea
I
that
think that's just foreshadowing the twist ending.
Perhaps. I think it's more that it's the idea that the ultra religious are the most repressed, and therefore, because they're the most repressed sexually, are they first to explode, against the women, and have the hate, and the first people you see exploding are A, military, and B, the sexually repressed religious types.
Yeah,
what was Elliot Gould's relationship with this family?
Well, I think he was a friend of the family, wasn't he?
Yeah, he worked with Jason Priestley, and they had worked together for a very long time. I think he was like a mentor, but they were basically partners. because they had mentioned traveling together like multiple times.
Yeah, they just come back from Africa, where they had been,
because I thought he was married to the
something.
mother until that one line that sort of established his sexuality later in the show.
Well, and Bella's not the mother either. Bella's the like she works with the Jason Priestley's wife.
Yeah.
No, she worked with because the wife.
Oh no, that's right. She was an epidemiologist too, but yeah. I thought the two of them were married. Yeah, but that's not the case. Yes. I mean, I can't fault them too much for not.
The family of epidemiologists that Nick described is in no way a family of epidemiologists. Is what we're saying. They just all work together.
And Jason Priestley's wife is not an epidemiologist.
Hey, if you have dinner with somebody in the first 5 minutes of a movie, you're a family.
That's fair. I think that's another interesting element that's threaded into this is that Jason Priestley's wife works at a women's shelter. So there is that lens of that not everything that happens is a big surprise to her. She's seen horrible things her entire career. So she starts seeing this on from the victim's point of view immediately, where everyone else it's more abstract. Because they show a bit with her talking about how the shelter's just completely overwhelmed. They've got people basically sleeping in the hallways that like they can't take anymore, but neither can anyone else. So yeah, it just adds a bit of an extra little thread of flavor to this. Surprisingly complex.
They take the shot at Jackson. They started off in Jacksonville, Florida. We're just going right there. Just that's where backward shit happens. Jacksonville, Florida.
And nobody's really surprised. Yeah, it takes a while before they realize that this is an epidemic because it's in Jacksonville. So.
Yeah, it's interesting how it starts. The bits that are hinted at pretty early on because it starts as something that we could see in the news anytime, where there's been some really horrific deaths happen in and around Jacksonville, but then as they start looking, they start finding that there's a pattern, basically along the Gulf of Mexico. Is where they start seeing it in other cities along the Gulf. But yeah, it is that it just 3 things happen that are all about Jacksonville in the space of about 10 minutes, and everyone's like, "Oh, maybe there's something weird going on in Jacksonville."
And I really like how they take advantage of the short runtime, not to have really an established main character. Because you latch onto somebody, and you think they're the main character, and then they're dead, or they're out of the show. I don't think you could do that in a longer format. You need somebody to follow, but I mean, Bella gets it rather early, and I thought she was going to be a real huge character in this.
The economics,
which made her death very effective, I thought. And
I loved it. I just I just don't think it would work in a longer format, and I like
I'm
they
not
recognize
sure about that. I'm not sure about that, and because I mean, Joe Dante had been wanting to do this story for many, many years, and wanted to do it as a feature-length film before he finally was able to do it in this format, which is why this format existing, Masters of Horror existing, was such a wonderful thing, because it gave so many directors and writers an opportunity to tell a story that they had been wanting to tell for years and could not get made. Were able to turn it into a television series, television show. That happened numerous times over the 2 years that this show was on the air, and it's a wonderful thing that unfortunately was lost when it went off. And even though it did spin off into kind of a sub series, for itself. But I think that this would have been even more effective had it been a full-length film.
I think if it was a full-length film, the third act with the mother and daughter would have been so huge and overwhelming, it would have taken over the whole thing. And I
it would
think
have been about
the
15
more
minutes.
important part is in the beginning.
I think it would have been about 15 minutes. I just think you would have had more effect of seeing, instead of suddenly every man is just a dick, I think you would have seen a more progressive kind of rollout of the aggression and the different things. And the Jason Priestley character would have seemed like the main character for longer before the twist that he isn't. Kind of comes in the middle to near the end. You might have lost what you had mentioned, that it was more effective because you didn't have, like, you had what seemed to be a main character suddenly not be the main character, and you might have lost that. But I think you would have gained other things if it had been a full length, movie. But either way, I'm glad it got made because I loved it. I thought this was fantastic, just so well done, and so on Joe Dante in that it didn't have the quirky humor. It is just a dark science fiction story.
Yeah, and it's so economical in its production, because it fits so much story and so many layers in this like short runtime. Like, just without feeling crowded either. Like, it doesn't feel shoved down your throat. Like, he lets you see things happen as opposed to explaining them. Like, you see the evolution of how men talk about women change throughout the runtime, like especially the first half hour, just a bit by a bit. But there's no character that stops and explains that to you. You can see very quickly.
It's not a 1950s science fiction film with the one character who explains everything.
Let's not forget about the decent amount of nudity in this.
Yes, surprising. Scene in a strip club, it led to some nudity that I was not expecting, but certainly enjoyed.
And that daughter's a pervert.
She's gone on to become quite a voice actress.
I've never heard my parents make love, but if I did, I'm not calling my friend to listen.
Not going, they're doing it. Yeah, no, that was weird.
Mixed feelings. My parents didn't look like that.
And if you want to see Jason Presley's pubes, we got it in this. They shy away from the full frontal, but there are pubes.
Yeah,
I didn't notice that, to be honest.
50-year-old female audience just shut off the podcast.
I feel different about the whole episode.
I guess I'm just mentioning that because this felt like a movie, not a short movie, but still a movie rather than just an episode of TV. This was an event viewing for me. I really enjoyed it.
I loved it. Like I say, do we want to get into the ending? I mean, do we want to get? We advise everybody to watch the episode before listening to the show. On the other hand, I don't want to give away kind of too much here. But
I don't think we have to mention what the twist is. I think we can discuss whether it was necessary or not.
Well, it's definitely necessary. It wrapped everything up and made sense why the epidemic had happened, and just.
Well, it brings us full circle to the title of the piece. I mean, that's kind of the Screwfly Solution is talking about how the Screwfly was eradicated, and it was eradicated by basically breaking its reproductive cycle. They messed with the reproductive cycle by they give a nice explanation at the beginning, but it's basically that you only have to kill one generation to completely eliminate a species. You can do it all at once, and maybe it's strange that this is almost 20 years ago, and as you go back further, you find that at all times people thought it was about to be the apocalypse, and that. But in the 21st century, we've decided that we've come to terms with that's probably not terrible. we're pretty awful. Maybe if it happens, it happens. I'm not helping it along, but
Yeah, we're really not doing that well, are we?
I I think the only thing that's dated is that it took an outside force. I noticed there was this news story as I record this news story a few days ago about someone who got a hold of an AI and then said, "I wonder if this AI can just destroy the world. Maybe I'll ask it." And I'm like, how long did we have AI before we just asked it if you can wreck the world? Like we don't need people. I'm just going to ask this AI if they can get rid of people.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's expecting is going to eventually do it anyway. So that makes sense. No, but it is true. I mean, without giving away the twist ending, you can say that the entire idea is to wipe out all of humanity.
Mhm.
If you get rid of all the women, the men can't reproduce, and the men will turn on each other as well. And somebody has said, this isn't working. We're going to start over, or we're going to wipe it completely clean and do whatever. We won't say who's the one who did that or anything without giving it away.
Yeah.
But that is the point. So, I mean, that needed to be there.
But wouldn't it have been just as effective if they had made it the man-made solution for the bugs that they mentioned in the beginning mutated to humans or something? Some reason I think it would have been just the fact that ending I enjoyed because it was weird and nice. But I don't think it was necessary for the overall story.
All right, we're going to give away the twist ending here.
Right.
It's aliens who have decided that as a species we're not working. The idea that we would do the same thing as an experiment to a bug or a different species, especially years ago, and decide that they're not working and just to see if we could. The idea that there's somebody who's that much more evolved than us who would do it to us, I think is very effective. That we're not nearly the advanced species that we think we are in our heads. That there's something else out there that views us as just bugs.
I think that's the element that would really that the extra time would work more. Like I think as opposed looking at the other elements, I like the tightness of it. The one thing that more screen time would give you is more time to play out some of those other ideas, because there's a quick hint that things that our main character that Elliot Gould and Jason Priestley have done, like there's a quick oh, do you mean you guys did this? Like, no, we mean something like what we were doing, but not us.
Yeah, I think if they had pronounced the angel sightings a little bit more throughout, I think I would have found the ending more satisfying.
I think that's the one thing that it's not a flaw of this. It's just what, like, where I think you could go with longer runtime is to have a few other paths to follow. I think that they don't necessarily. I don't think they necessarily have to tell you why, because you like there's lots of these stories that are structured around not needing to know why. It's just not that story. This feels like a short story ending. Like it feels like the way a lot of horror short stories are. That there's like horror and sci-fi stories where it's going along and then it's Bigfoot. Just in the last two paragraphs.
Now that would have been a good twist.
That would have been a cool twist. Yes, I would have.
If it was Bigfoot all along,
then we could have put it in the octagon.
But then, but I mean, 12 Monkeys is basically the same kind of thing, but done with just nihilists, just people who think that the human race probably should end. And because that's the structure, and 12 Monkeys has that time to play out other theories, other ideas of what could cause this, because they don't know at the beginning. I love 12 Monkeys, but yeah, I think it is an interesting idea that it's very focused on, like it's just got that extra level of men versus women and all that goes with that.
And like I say, when you see a male name as the author, who actually is female, who has this complicated history, It just, the layers just start to really unfold at an even greater level. One of the things is I thought it was aliens, and Nick had mentioned angels. Is it aliens or angels? It could be either one, I suppose.
Oh, it was definitely aliens. It just they mentioned angels several times.
Yeah.
As there were angel sightings, which I took in as interpretations of the aliens.
Yeah, the boy says that. The boy that's hanging out with all the dudes in the like
The big
general
fat
store.
guy in the beginning who kills the first lady says it too. Have
Oh,
you
okay.
seen the angels? They're nothing like you think.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
God spoke to me was often one of the things that we heard right early in the episode.
Yeah, and because the boy says that he saw the angels out in the woods, as well. But yeah, I think it's I think as you were saying with the part of how religion plays into this, you need some as a person, you need a framework that makes sense, and everything fits into your whole worldview. And if your worldview includes that angels are a real thing, then you're going to interpret that as angels. If your worldview doesn't have that, but it does have space aliens, it's going to be space aliens pretty fast. So I think that's kind of how, because they make a point of one of the characters saying this isn't about religion, that's just a symptom.
Yeah, that's true.
It's it's a side effect of what's going on, because it's how people just work it through their head.
Well, it's amazing how this discussion is affecting my interpretation, because at the beginning I thought it was just a really strong episode. Now I'm thinking it's one of my favorites.
It's one of my favorites. Absolutely, it's so layered, and I mean it's whereas we're often having fun and talking about, hey, this has good kills and good gore, good nudity, or whatever we're talking about, and we're having fun with it. This one really forces an intellectual discussion about the topic matter and the actual episode itself. It forces us to do that instead of and analyze it differently. Really, just absolutely extremely well acted, extremely well written, extremely well directed. Just spectacular episode.
I mean, even the choices, you're never really sure when the sickness takes over, because I mean, in areas that are supposedly not affected, you still have pigs of men.
That's right.
Like
yeah.
us, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you don't know when they're being affected and when they're just an asshole, and that's what makes them dangerous. And that plays both in the real world and in this story, that you don't know which guy's just talking. If if you're a woman, you don't know which guy's just a loudmouth and who's actually dangerous.
And who appears to be safe but isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, there is that element of yeah, I mean, they do have that element of family violence that is brought in by one of our main characters working in that world, that plays into how everyone gets seen, and how this sickness develops, because everything makes perfect sense to the person who's infected.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I think it's the meatiest episode out of the lot. I mean, this is the kind of thing that sci-fi does incredibly well. It's asking just what
I
is the
mentioned
patient
how much I
pulse?
loved Homecoming, but Homecoming, that's I think this is what Homecoming hoped to achieve. And now I can look back, it actually weakens that episode because this episode actually achieved much of what that episode wanted to.
Yeah. Well, I think when we were talking about Homecoming, it really felt like, I mean, certainly there was a political statement about the division of right and left in the U.S.
A little heavy-handed.
But it was, I think that it was both heavy-handed and, in hindsight, a bit naive. That it would be as black hats and white hats as that story was. that it's that really that the bad guy knows that they're bad is what happened in that, and in the real world the bad guy thinks he's the good guy, and vice versa. Saying that I have no idea if I'm someone else's bad guy for sure.
Everyone is a hero in their own story, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I actually even like how Joe Dante seems to take a shot at Masters of Horror itself by including a shot of imprint in the arousal test.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
I imagine that's just because they own the footage, but that's a neat. I didn't notice that.
We're just as guilty as the thing we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Within this episode.
Yeah, that's very clever, actually. That's good point, Nick. Very, very good point. Like I say, it could be just that they own the footage, but the idea that there's a deeper layer even to that is,
he's a smart man.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, let's hope for Gremlins 3. We'll always hope for that. We're waiting and waiting.
You know what? I prefer a non-Warner Brothers Joe Dante film. Just that I think the name is just a little too much. I want to hear what Joe Dante has to say, not what other people want Joe Dante to say.
I don't understand your. As far as Gremlins?
I think he's saying not a franchise. He doesn't want it to be.
Not a franchise film is what I'm saying.
It's his franchise film, though. He made the first two, so he'd be making this one.
Yes, but the powers that be would want a Gremlins film. They won't want a Joe Dante's Gremlins film. It'll be.
I don't know about that. Both of the first two were Joe Dante Gremlins film.
How about Jack can wish for it, despite the fact that it's unlikely to ever happen. So he can wish it to be anything he wants it to be, given that it's not going to be a thing anyway.
True.
I agree with Nick that just another Joe Dante thing is always great. If he's going to return to something, I think the Burbs could stand an update.
What is his last? Is that Joe Looney Tunes Back in Action? Is that his latest film? Like, what year was that? Like mid 2000s?
Actually, it might be early 2000s.
Humorously, he's working on a TV series about the Gremlins.
Oh, that's hilarious! There you go.
There's a little bit of a gap. Some TV episodes here and there. That's including an episode of DC's Legends of Tomorrow. That's interesting. I don't know. I'll have to look to see what episode that is. Looks like the last feature was Burying the X, if I'm seeing this correctly.
Burying the X.
2014, yeah.
Okay. What year was Looney Tunes, if you're just curious?
Looney Tunes 2003 for Looney Tunes Back in Action. So before he did Masters of Horror.
Okay. Quite a while ago. All right. Interesting. Well, he's one of those guys. He doesn't need to work all the time. His legacy is set.
Oh yeah, Trailers from Hell has him.
Is that still going on? Are they still doing new trailers? Are they still doing new trailers from Hell?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. All right. Anything last? The Canada spotting, you mentioned Jason Priestley. Other than that, the fact that it says things like in Ontario, Canada.
Yeah, she flees to Canada pretty fast. So so yeah, we have Vancouver doubling for Northern Ontario, which is that's not a normal switch, but we've got Burnaby.
Yeah, neither is her man costume, so
they did the best they could.
It's the kind of like costumed as a man that you see in like Charlie Chaplin movies, where like the audience isn't supposed to be fooled at all, but assume that the characters in the story are,
unless they are.
Excellent
episode. I would give it.
Fantastic,
I think it may be the best we've seen yet.
It's a terrific.
It's got everything. It's intelligent, great acting, great writing, great directing, nudity. It's really, there's nothing that it doesn't hit.
Actually, is there anything with the Elliot Gould in it that you haven't said that's the best of whatever it is?
No. Maybe his I believe he played Philip Marlowe once in The Long Goodbye.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good though.
It's good. It's just not Humphrey Bogart.
Maybe
good.
not the best. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's good still.
Yeah, that's you're pretty much like you're in the also ran if Humphrey Bogart is the most famous version of the character.
Yeah.
There's no man Benedict Cumberbatch. He was great compared to Basil Rathbone as Sherlock Holmes.
Exactly.
he can be good on his own, but don't have to put everything on a chart.
Scale to exactly. You don't have to compare everything. Sometimes just accept things for what they are and enjoy them.
I know Basil Rathbone's not making any more, so I might as well watch whoever's doing it now.
So my final question to you guys is who would win in a fight, Elliot Gould or Judd Hirsch? Like we put them in a boxing ring, 12 rounds, and say go at it. Who's coming out on top there? Who's the toughest
Elliot Gould.
Jew?
Elliot Gould. But I always think of Elliot Gould in MASH, and I always think of Judd Hirsch in Independence Day. So I'm not really having this match happen on an even playing field.
That's true. That's true. Judd Hirsch, you just realize now that Independence Day came out like 1996, and he was really old in that film.
He plays Jeff Goldblum's dad in a movie that's 25 years old.
Wow,
that's amazing. Father, 25 years ago. Fantastic. Well, this was a lot of fun, and this episode was one of the ones that makes this all worthwhile. So we are the Cult Film Showdown. You can support us on Patreon. Just search Cult Film Showdown, and we are on Instagram, and we're sponsored by WeTalkPodcasts.com, the home of the Octagon. And that is our search for the ultimate B movie. And We Talk Podcasts is on Facebook, and they are on Twitter. And please subscribe and rate wherever you get your podcasts, and drop us a note on YouTube. We love hearing what people think of what we're doing. And also leave us a note of what you would like us to do next, because we only have 6 episodes to go in Masters of Horror. The next up is episode 8. So which was that?
How many episodes do you think, if we have 6 to go, what's our episode to nudity ratio that we're looking at here? What do we?
Oh, we're gonna make a prediction on that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I look at who's coming up.
That's yeah. You got your thumb on the scale there if you're checking which director's coming up. I'm just thinking that Argento has already done this time. We've had the Argento of the season.
We got a few though. We got.
I'm gonna go 4 or 6.
Maybe.
I'm gonna say 4 or 6.
Tom Holland maybe, but Stuart Gordon definitely. I mean, I think we might be at a 50-50 ratio.
Didn't we already do our Stuart Gordon this?
Yeah,
season?
No, that was season 1.
Family was season 1?
Family was on Landis.
Oh, okay. Thought it was, okay.
Okay, so Jack says 3 of 6. I say 4 of 6.
I have to go 3 of 6, 50% ratio.
All right.
Well, there is another Japanese director coming up, so that I don't know if that's a yes or no. That's probably a yes.
Well,
there's 2.
We as always we play Price is Right rules. So closest to without going over. So if it is 3 or 3.5, you guys win.
Okay. So in other words, if it's the one breath like we saw from Argento.
That's right. If there's just the one nipple, then it counts as a half an episode.
I win. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Let's go one nipple. That's not a sentence you usually hear me say. Let's go one nipple.
Yeah, that's there's some guys
All
like
right,
side
guys.
boob. Jack likes just the one boob.
Buttocks, but no nudity up top also counts as half.
All right. Next up is season 2, episode 8, Valerie on the Stairs. And we will talk to you next time.
Just based on the title alone, you just think nudity.
Valerie on the Stairs.